Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. The reason I do these transmissions, and they are transmissions, is because I am so inspired to help make A Course in Miracles relevant into anyone's lives who wants to use these teachings as a way to not only ascend, but a way to awaken, a way to really remember the truth of who we are. And it is absolutely so crucial, so imperative that we are completely operating from truth. And Jesus taught us this 2000 plus years ago. I mean, he was killed because he was teaching truth. And he told us that he was the way, he was the truth, he was the life. And you are the way, you are the truth, you are the life. And I am here sharing what I know to inspire you to want to find that truth for yourself, to feel it, to experience it, to have a knowingness about who you really are. Because you are the truth, you are the way, you are the life. Each and every one of us is an aspect, an expression of the creative source. It's like there is a puzzle with a bazillion pieces. Every one of us is a piece. Have you ever put a puzzle together and found that you were missing one, two, three, four, five pieces? I mean, if I'm missing a lot of pieces, I don't even bother putting the puzzle together. If I'm missing a handful of pieces, I'll go through it, and then I'll kind of look around the house to see maybe where those pieces went. If I'm missing one piece, my gosh, it's just like, uh, all that work, because one piece is important to the whole. You are that piece. I am that piece in a world that is multidimensional, in a world where all is one and one is all. What is so amazing is that every single one of us is that important piece. There is no way around it, because all of us are reflections of one another. It's holographic. All is contained in the whole, and all is contained in the part, in the piece. So, as we work through these teachings, we are still in chapter 30, called The New Beginning in A Course in Miracles. There is no way to go fast through this. Anybody who goes fast is really not fully receiving everything that is possible from these teachings. And I am one of those people who went through it fast, and then I had to take my time, because one of the reasons why it was necessary for me to go through fast is because when I began to read A Course in Miracles, hello, sweet sister. When I began to read A Course in Miracles, I had just read the book, The Disappearance of the Universe. And that book was an introduction to the Course for me. I had never, oh my goodness, look at that sweet baby there. Oh, nothing like grandbabies. I had never experienced A Course in Miracles up until the year that I began to read it. And I believe in some of the dates escape me, but I believe it was 2011, December 2011. I went on a trip with my then husband. We went to, where did we go? We went to Europe, and I can't remember what town. We traveled a lot, so I can't remember. Vienna. We went to Vienna, and so I knew it was a very long flight. So I decided to take a thick book with me, because I knew I could read it on the way there, on the way back. I read pretty quickly, and I happened to have on my bookcase a book called The Disappearance of the Universe, and I hadn't felt the inspiration to read it, but I grabbed it because it was thick. I grabbed it, I put it in my suitcase, and I took it with me. On the way to Vienna, I'm reading this book and I'm going, oh my goodness. And let me just throw a little something there. When I read that book, I had already been teaching since 2007 something called the power of awareness, which was inspired. It was something that I received. I felt guided to write the power of awareness. All of that information came through me. I never taught a course like that. I didn't know what that was, but it came through me. I wrote it down, and I did as I was told. I was told to go find a place. It was going to be called the Center for Awareness. my husband at the time in 2007. The husband in 2007, the husband in 2011 were two different husbands. The one in 2007 was the father of my children. I started my spiritual awakening in 2002. So in 2007, 5 years later, he knew I was changing. I was shifting. I wasn't the same person he knew. That's because I was being guided to awaken. I was being guided. For me, it was the consciousness of Jesus. It was teaching me about the difference between love and fear. It was letting me know what was my ego. I was seeing my ego, and I was just so shocked so many times on a regular basis for years that I had this part of me that was ruthless and vindictive and mean and conniving and lying and cheating and manipulative and passive aggressive and aggressive. And I was watching this. It's like I was watching myself from this observer going, who the heck is that? I didn't think of myself as that way. I thought of myself, I portrayed myself as this kind, loving, smart, caring person. But what was operating in the background was so manipulative and conniving and lying and would say whatever needed to be said to get whatever it is that I needed to get. I did things to get things. It was so fascinating. But I was given in 2007 the power of awareness to teach. And I was told, you're going to go open a center. And I drove around the area that I was in. I went to a couple of places and it didn't feel right. And then I walked into this one and I knew this is the place. And I rented it. And my then husband, Philip, was like, why are we taking on, this commitment to pay rent for a space where you're going to teach something? You don't even know what you're teaching. And I was like, I have to do it. I have to do it. I have to follow this guidance. I cannot not do it. And while I taught the power of awareness, people would ask me, is this based on A Course in Miracles? And I didn't even know what A Course in Miracles was. I thought maybe it was a book Marianne Williamson wrote. So I would check in with Jesus. I said, am I supposed to read that book? And I was told no. And then I realized that Marianne Williamson wrote A Return to Love about A Course in Miracles. And I asked, am I supposed to read that book? I even went and got it. And Jesus said, nope, you're not going to read anything else until I tell you to read it. I was like, okay. I was okay listening to that voice because it was, not only was it loving, it was gentle, but it was always spot on. So I had learned to trust it. And then I ended up opening up the center. Philip and I ended up getting divorced. It was part of my journey. It was a lot of healing took place through that divorce with my issues with my father that needed to be addressed and with my mother. Then I meet Ken, and that activated all kinds of other things. And then in 2011, we went to Vienna, and I was told, yeah, you're going to take the book, The Disappearance of the Universe. And I started reading it, and I realized, oh, this book is about A Course in Miracles, which I did not know when I first picked it up. So I'm reading it, and sorry, I got a little bit of a runny nose. The weather is shifting drastically here in Colorado. So I'm going through the change into cold weather now. But anyways, I am reading this book and I couldn't put it down. It was amazing. It was letting me know what A Course in Miracles was about. And A Course in Miracles is about understanding that we have two voices inside of us. One is love, one is fear, one is God, one is ego. And it was like, wow, that's what I've been teaching. That's what the power of awareness is all about. And I had been given visuals to share. This drawing, I drew it by hand for many, many years up until I had this one printed this year, actually. But when I do presentations, I always draw it out by hand because I want people to see the journey we go through. Anyways, we left Vienna, got back home at the time to Atlanta, Georgia. And I already had A Course in Miracles book on the shelves. I don't remember if I bought it or somebody gifted it to me. I think somebody had actually gifted it to me when I was at the center. And I pulled that book from the shelves because I heard it is time for you to study A Course in Miracles. When I went to Vienna, it was in December. Actually, I was there for my birthday. It was December 6th. When I came back to Atlanta, I think it was like the 10th or 12th of December. And I opened up the Course in Miracles, this big fat book. I opened it up and I could not put it down. I was told, even though in the beginning of the book, it tells you, you read it one lesson at a time. I was told you're going to read until you're done reading. And it took me literally until the end of the year. So the last 2.5, 3 weeks of 2011, I read it cover to cover. Mind you, I was receiving just an energetic experience with the book. What I was reading made perfect sense to me. Nothing, I didn't stumble on anything that was being said. I was just drinking it in. I knew I had to do it that way. But I also knew I was going to go back. And sure enough, January 1, I went and bought another book because the first one that I had was so covered in highlights. I couldn't even go back and read it if I wanted to. So January 1st, 2012, I started the book. I started reading the text from the beginning and I started doing one lesson a day. And I did that year, the next year. And I have every year I would buy a new book and every year I would do the same thing. I highlight less, but I still highlight quite a bit. And I think I skipped maybe 1 or 2 years. I was teaching from the course, my mastery program. I was teaching the manual for teachers. So I focused just on that one, maybe it might have been 2 years. But I read it. I cannot not imagine the rest of my life not reading it because although I understand every word, nothing about it is odd to me or something that I can't comprehend as it is for many people. Course in Miracles is very challenging for many people. But that's because the power of awareness had prepared my consciousness to receive what's in the course. And then I was guided to read the course. I had the assistance of Jesus was right there with me. And Jesus can be right there with you. Jeshua, whatever you want to call it, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, spirit. I felt that I would have questions and they were being answered as I went. And I still have questions. And till this day, I open up the book and I feel the charge of the frequency. I mean, most of the time I read it and it moves me to tears because it touches me at such a deep place because the Course in Miracles, first, it becomes an intellectual understanding, and which it was for me. But then it becomes an experiential process. You feel it. The words have meaning. When it speaks of love, of compassion, of kindness, of tolerance, you feel it. Who have I done this for? Have I done this for me? When it speaks of the ego and the ways that it lies and it creates suffering and it's insanity, I feel it. I've done that. I've lived in that world. So the Course wants us to experience life with the ego, life with God. Actually, I have a chart that I've created because of that very. I'll put it right up here. Understanding that we can experience the ego's world or we can experience God's world. We are being taught through the Course in Miracles to understand the distinction between these two and to pick the one that we prefer. We have free will. We are not stuck having to do anything according to how God wants us to do things. If we were, we would never experience suffering. If God wanted us to live according to God, we would live eternally. Not only would we be non-physical, there would be no need for bodies, there'd be no need for separation, but it would be pure bliss. It would be strictly an experience that is inside of the mind of God. We would be like living like a dream in our mind. You know how in a dream you have people and animals and things happen and maybe waterfalls and airplanes. I've flown on airplanes inside of a dream. We would have that, but none of that would be solid. It wouldn't be physical. It's not necessary. The ego gives us the opportunity for physicality. So what A Course in Miracles wants us to understand is that while we have these physical bodies that appear to be separate, we need to understand not only what these bodies can be used for, But we need to understand that to use them in a way that is going to allow us to have a happy dream, which is our purpose. Our purpose is to be happy, even inside of the dream of separation. But to have a happy dream, you've got to listen to the voice for God. It's like that voice that was telling me, you're going to go rent a center. And I was like, a center? What? I'm a realtor. I don't need a center. I had an office already. I didn't need a big space, a 2,000 square foot space. And I would host events, and people started coming, and we would have book clubs and gatherings. And it was fascinating having all these people coming in there. And then I would teach the workshops, The Power of Awareness, once a month. It was a 3-day workshop. It's grown to be a 5-day retreat now. The last time that I did it, it was 5 days, because it's very in depth. But you're looking at your whole life. We go through that whole circle. We see aspects from everything. And the reason that is necessary is because we must return to the source of the programming of the ego belief system. We receive this from the outer world. When we are born, when we incarnate and we have this physical body, we take on a family. We have a contract to incarnate and play out these roles with each other. You're going to be my mom, you're going to be my dad, you're going to be my auntie, you're going to be my grandpa, and down the road, you're going to be husband number 1, husband number 2, however many husbands you need to have. I had whatever I needed to have because they were part of my contract, and there could be more. Who knows? I'm open to receive. But the purpose of the work is you have to see that your mind is not your own. When you pick up information from the outside, when mother, father give you a name, did you pick that name? No, but you go around calling yourself that. I'm Laina. Well, am I really Laina, or am I something that was given the label Laina? And when you begin to really want to know, who am I? You've got to go to the place where before I had a name, what was I? What am I? What is consistent throughout everything? Then we cultivate a relationship with our spirit, our soul, whatever you want to call it. And that part that is nameless, you can't label it, is an expression of God. It's that piece of the puzzle that is unique. And then we take on all of our life experiences to give us an identity, to give us one of my clients calls it a database. I used to call it a filing cabinet, where you begin to file all of your beliefs and all of your identity. So you've got this whole filing cabinet of who you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to have to do life right. So Course in Miracles is a brilliant teaching process that helps you see what is egoic mind and what is God's mind. Because it is equally as important that we understand that the ego is the creation of our beliefs that we have picked up from the outside. It is equally as important to understand what God is that has not been tainted by human understanding. When I began this spiritual journey, one of the things that I was guided to learn was, how was the Catholic Church created? Who decided to start that? It wasn't here before it was here. So I went down that rabbit hole and learned the politics of the Catholic Church. The inception of it was for the purpose of manipulation, so that the Emperor Constantine would have dominion over the people. And this happened in the year 325 after AD. So Jesus was already gone for 300 plus years. And then they formed this Catholic Church, taking in information from Jesus's time, creating the Gospels, picking and choosing what would go in there, and also leaving a lot of things out. And a lot of those things that were left out, because you can't hide the truth forever, they've been surfacing. Some of the most recent ones were discovered in Egypt, in a town called Nag Hammadi, in, I think it was 1940s. I can't remember the exact date. 1947 is coming to mind, but I in the 1940s, these people were on an excavation. Actually, I think it was a shepherd boy, went into the cave and found these things, brought him out. And then, of course, a major excavation ensued, because they realized, oh, wow, that he is finding important things that have been hidden. And if you read accountings from that time frame in 325, when the Catholic Church was being formed, and all of these bishops have been called together to create this council that was going to determine what the New Testament was going to be all about. You can read accountings if you do a lot of digging. And of course, we have scholars who have done that work for us. One that I happen to follow was Elaine Pagels. She is a professor at one of the Ivy League schools, a theologian. She happens to be Jewish. So she wanted to study the history of Jesus, who was Jewish, and then follow what happened with his teachings and how did it become Christianity. So as you follow that, you begin to see that those bishops that were brought together to decide what would be in the New Testament, they had things that they left out, and they wanted those things destroyed. And those keepers of those truths, some of them were able to bury some of the things that they had written on parchment papers or on leathers or on rock, stones, tablets, and they got buried because it was meant to be discovered down the road. And as I began to piece things together, I began to realize, Jesus was telling us 2,000 years ago that each of us is the light. Each of us is the way. Each of us is the truth. So if that is what we are, then that has to be inside of us. So the journey to discover that is a journey to question, who am I? If I am the light, if I am the way, if I am the truth, can I just be Laina, a limited person with an identity, with this personality and these behaviors that does a lot of egoic things? Well, that doesn't match light, purity. So I had to do the work of discovering, how did I cover up my light so that I could learn how to uncover it? It's a process of going backwards in time and peeling back layers and layers and layers until I came to realize Jesus was right. I am the way, I am the light, and I am the truth for me. And I can share with you how I got to that, but I'm not your way, I'm not your light, and I'm not your truth. You are all of that for you, but you have to find your way there. And because we're helping one another, once you realize that we're all one, what I do for you, I do for me. And helping others is how I continue to feed that part of me that wants to stay grounded in that truth. It's really easy to get sidetracked and get tempted out there in this world. But for me, I stay very focused in sharing the truth so that I can continue to learn the truth and experience the truth. So we were reading in the chapter 30 of the text. Again, I just love this book. Love these teachings. We are in chapter 30th. The section that we're in is called A Changeless Reality, which is section number 8. And last week we completed paragraph number 4. So today we're going to start paragraph number 3. And this whole section, these first 3, no, I'm sorry, completed paragraph number 2. Today we're going to do paragraph number 3, or however far we get through it. So the changeless reality is about recognizing that appearances deceive, but they can be changed. We can change our appearances. Reality, though, is changeless. So appearances, Laina, the mother, the sister, the daughter, the girlfriend, the wife, the divorcee, all of those appearances can change. But what is changeless about me is what this journey was all about. And that reality that is changeless is the truth of who we are. That is where we are the truth. That is where we are the light. And to come to know that aspect of self is one thing intellectually. The Course helps us with that clearly. But the other part is experientially. You have to experience it. And the way that we experience it is by making a decision to accept that it is our truth. And as we accept that it is our truth, what if this is true? That I am changeless reality, that I am the light. And you give yourself permission. What does light feel like? You're literally giving an invitation to feel what you are. but you can't feel what you are if you don't give permission for that experience. So there is a lot that is being taught to us that can stay at the intellectual level, and the ego that gets spiritualized has a field day with this truth. I know I did. And sometimes we abuse it. We use it to tell other people, I'm spiritual and you're not. I'm this level of consciousness and you're not, which is something that I highly, highly, highly encourage everybody who's studying with me to please stay humble from the beginning. You're learning things, but don't use them to hurt other people. Don't use them to make yourself superior. If you do, it's going to have consequences. And of course, I've had those consequences that I've had to deal with when I utilized spirituality to make myself either superior or become a doormat, floor mat, whatever. And I had to see, oh wow, I was moving in those egoic ranges of better than, lesser than, until I finally found my way, because I am the way. And when I found that way, then it all began to make sense. And I began to realize, okay, what is changeless is my reality. That part is eternal, doesn't die. Well, that takes care of fear of death. That part of me is love. Well, that takes care of, I'm thinking fearful thoughts, then I'm believing things that are not true. I'm creative. I'm supposed to create. If I'm stagnant and doing nothing, twiddling my thumbs, then I know, oops, ego's taking over here. So it becomes really clear. The path becomes really clear once you understand the edges, and then you bring yourself into the middle. And that's what this chart is all about. This is an area where we are swinging. When we are in the ego mode, we are swinging. And little by little, the swings get lesser and lesser. We're moving from right to wrong, superior to inferior, lesser. And then little by little, we come to the middle. And then we go through the progression right up the middle. You stay down the middle way, because you realize that's the only way you're going to find happiness, is you stay in the middle way, which is the path of truth, period. You don't deviate from that. So if reality is changeless, then that's what makes it real. That's how you know it's reality with a capital R. Everything else is of the ego, which is reality with a little r, because it's changing all the time. So we have to recognize that we have the ability. It tells us this in paragraph number 2 that we read last week, that the happy dream about us, about our brothers and sisters, begins to take form once we recognize that we deserve perfect health, perfect freedom from all forms of lack, and safety from any kinds of disasters, any kinds of lies. So we are being told exactly what the ego is and how it keeps us from knowing the truth. And then we are given the opportunity to recognize you're going to be tempted. As a matter of fact, I'm studying right now with some friends a book called The Journey Home. And The Journey Home is channeled story, a metaphor by Lee Carroll is the channeler, and he channels the consciousness of Cryon. And The Journey Home is a beautiful tale of the steps that we have to go through. It's its own circle. We have to go through these distinct houses to come back to the truth of who we are. And in that story, he is being tempted by the ego. So we're going to start off paragraph number 3. What is temptation but a wish to make illusions real? It does not seem to be the wish that no reality be so. Yet it is an assertion that some forms of idols have a powerful appeal that makes them harder to resist than those you would not want to have reality. Temptation then is nothing more than this: a prayer. The miracle touch not some dreams, but keep their unreality obscure and give to them reality instead. And heaven gives no answer to the prayer, nor can a miracle be given you to heal appearances you do not like. You have established limits. What you ask is given you, but not of God, who knows no limits. You have limited yourself. This whole thing speaks to the temptations of the ego. If you need to be right, then you're limiting yourself. God wants you to be unlimited. The path, the way is unlimited, but you limit yourself. Well, I can only do this, and I can only have this partner, and I can only get healed by this means, and I can only have this doctor, and I can only have this teacher, and I can only have this president. The ego is all about limitation. But God allows us to limit ourselves because God gave us the ability to be unlimited. And unlimited means you are so unlimited, you can limit yourself. You are so free, you can bind yourself. You are so eternal that you can pretend to be temporary. So we have the ability to try anything that we want. And the reason we can try anything that we want is because although it is hard to understand and accept as a human, we're made of energy. You know, we are temporary, having temporary experiences, but what we are is eternal energy. The human, the ego that gets invested. I am Laina, I am special, and I am this or that, or a doctor, or a president, or homeless. This is it, and I am special in this separation, this specific thing that I am. Well, when we attach ourselves to that is who we are accepting temptation. We're being tempted by the ego to believe that is all that we are. And that's okay. God is not going to interfere, as it says in here. And heaven gives no answer to the prayer. You want to just be line up, that's okay. Nor can a miracle be given you to heal appearances you do not like. If I really, and listen, how many of us walk around saying, I am an addict, I am rich, I am a Catholic, I am homeless. We label ourselves, we limit ourselves, we say, this is what I am, and by gosh, this is it. So we establish the limits. What you ask is given you, but not by God, who knows no limits. So what gives us limits? When it says in sentence 8, you have limited yourself. What limits us? The ego. Ego puts through fears. Well, this is all you can do. You can't do that. You know, if you're this, you can't be that. It creates a veil of darkness. We operate inside of a delusion that there's less, that we create a very small world for ourselves. That which is cosmic and eternal and universal, little by little, shrinks itself down to I'm just this little human on this physical plane. And we go from our expanded self into a contraction. That's what the ego is a contraction that we do to ourselves, but God isn't doing that to us. However, God allows it because God created us unlimited. We can use our powers any way that we want to. So it goes on to say in paragraph number 4, reality is changeless. Miracles but show what you have interposed between reality and your awareness is unreal and does not interfere at all. So what is a miracle? A miracle, it's a course in, Course in Miracles. A miracle is changing your mind, shifting your perception. I've been looking at it with the ego. Okay, and so I have fear. What if I didn't have fear? That's a shift in perception. That is, let me look at it like God sees it. So I need the miracle to help me look at things the way God sees them, not because God is saying, this is the way that you have to do it. God doesn't say that. But it's because we get tired of doing it this way. You get tired of suffering. You get tired of being contracted and limited and small. So it's an opportunity to give yourself permission to see things from another perspective. So as I was going through my journey and I was realizing that my second husband, there were things that I had not learned because my first husband, in that contract, those lessons were not there to be had, but they were there with Ken. So I had to recognize that even though I was beginning to feel so bad, oh my gosh, I'm going to have another divorce in a short period of time. What have I done? I'm a spiritual teacher. I have a center. How can this be happening to me? I had to humble myself and go through these lessons with just focusing on the details of the lessons, especially in the part of relationships. I had to understand what relationships were all about. I needed to see that I had created for myself a life where I really hadn't taken responsibility for knowing who am I really, nor who are these other beings that I say I love. Who are they? And my ego had opinions about them, but I wanted to know, what does my soul know about them? So I went through a total, complete um, dissecting of how I showed up in relationships, seeing what was my egoic way of being in relationships, which is always codependent, always manipulative. You give to get, which means you're going to lie, you're going to cheat, you're going to do all kinds of things to have your way. But of course, you would never admit that you're doing that. And then there's the relationships according to God. And these are where you establish holy instances all the time. You speak the truth all the time. Your ego may not like it. As a matter of fact, your ego won't like it, but you do not allow the ego to tempt you with lies. You do not allow yourself to be tempted off the path. And when you get tempted and you go off the path, you realize, oh, I better get back on the path of truth, the path down the middle, the path that is the way to what it is that you're all looking for, what I was looking for. Looking for love in all the wrong places had me create special relationships. And those special relationships were the angelic beings who played roles to help me see how I went off the path, because they were there off the path to help me find my way back to the path. And the path was to recognize reality is changeless. If that is the truth, then why do I continue to go off and veer and wonder and create issues for myself? Because every single time that I would lie, or every time that I would twist the truth, or be operating from fear or operating from lack, I would veer off that path that was that narrow. It's the path less traveled, frankly. So the sentence number 3 says, the cost of the belief there must be some appearances beyond the hope of change is that the miracle cannot come forth from you consistently. Well, that's the cost. If you're believing the ego, you're not going to be consistently reminded of the truth of who you are. If you veer off the path into going into fear around death, or fear around illness, or fear around lack of finances, if you go down that path, you're going to be tempted into what is going to change. One day you may be afraid of death, the next day you may not be, but then 3 days later you might be afraid of. You give yourself permission to wander in the desert of the ego's doing. And that's where you're going to be tempted. You're going to be tempted to allow different things that change, because the ego's reality is always changing. It takes on different personalities, different personas, different situations. It's going to take you down a zigzaggy path. You're going to learn, no doubt. But if you stay down the middle and you have the thought, oh, I'm afraid of death. Oh, I'm afraid of, lack. There's not enough money, or fear. If you stay down the path, you go, there's a thought in my mind. But that thought, I don't have to believe it, because it's my ego. It's my old information. It's what's in my filing cabinet. It's data that is in there, but that's not who I am. In the middle path, you stay constantly reminding yourself the truth of who you are according to God. If you veer off the path, then you're getting the information of the truth that is changing always according to the ego, which means it's been made up by a bunch of other people. And if you're afraid of God and you're going to go to hell when you die, then the influences of the church are there. If you come back to the path and you stay grounded in the truth of who you are, you have the thoughts, but you don't get tempted. You have the thought and you address it. That's an egoic thought that's trying to pull me off my center. I'm not going to go. And you sit there and you allow that fear to just burn, because it's the ego trying to pull you, using the fear to pull you off your path, so that then you will feed it with the discomfort of the fears, because then you're going to buy into those stories. You're going to buy into those temptations. So you can go off. It's your choice. But God never said you have to go off. God says you can, but I'm always going to be here to light the way for you if that's what you prefer. Sentence 4 says, for you have asked it be withheld from power to heal all dreams. We, when we get tempted, say, okay, my temptation is going to withhold the power to heal me. but you're the one choosing it, because nobody has power to make you choose, to make you think something that is not of your choosing. You have to agree with that. Even people who have been tortured, they, in their mind, they stay clear. I am not going to give in. I am not going to let them make me think things that are not true or say things that are not true. Some people have that power, and some demonstrated, like Jesus did. We've had amazing people who were killed for speaking their truth. Martin Luther King Jr., all men are equal. We should not be looking at each other based on the color of our skin. So when you have conviction of the truth, you don't fear death. As a matter of fact, you're willing to lay your life down because you believe truth. You're not going to be tempted into being false and believing lies. So it goes on to say, there is no miracle you cannot have when you desire healing. Let's make a big notation of that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put a little X in here, because that is such an important thing. There is no miracle you cannot have when you desire healing. And this is the thing about healing. We have been conditioned to believe that the body is what is real. So the ego is all about the body. And of course, the bodies get sick, and we have examples everywhere, and bodies are being poisoned because the air, the food, the water, the soil, all of that is being poisoned. If you're willing to see the big picture, you see that the ego that operates with fear and darkness and suffering, it wants people to suffer. If it achieves levels of status, of power and money, like heads of corporations, heads of governments, it will do whatever it can to bring about suffering, because it feeds off of the energy of suffering, not just its own, but the energy of others. So that's why we have this 1% and this 99%. Well, when you start studying A Course in Miracles, what the insanity in the world begins to make a lot more sense. You can see then how the humanity has gone to the place that it is today, because when we move off the path, then we're going to play the game, the temptation that I'm less than you because you have the title and I don't, or I'm less than you because you have the financial position. You were born with a silver spoon and I don't. When you veer off the path, you're going to get tempted with all kinds of lies. And we have been tempted with the lies that we are less than, that we don't have as much, or that somebody else gets to decide for us. That's been done through education, through the medical system, through the financial systems, political systems. They have, we don't. But if you are okay not having, then you are agreeing that that is what you prefer to experience. That's how you're going to get your lessons, and you're going to get all the cast of characters necessary to make those lessons real for you, to have a reality here in this physical world, small r reality. But there is no miracle you cannot have when you desire healing. If you're done being less than, if you're done being just 1% or 9% or 99%, whatever it is, and you want to be one with all that is, if you're tired of being sick, if you're tired of being poor, if you're tired of being lonely, if you're tired of being addicted, or you're tired of suffering, then you're ready for the miracle. But you got to come down. You got to get on the path. And the path to healing is, you got to understand, you got to go through the mind first. You've got to heal your thinking. You've got to sort out thoughts that are not true from thoughts that are true. What does God say about me? And contrast that to what you think about you. I'm not good enough. God says you're perfect and magnificent. Well, there's a big difference there, isn't there? So then you got to find out, well, how did I come to thinking I'm not worthy? Well, I went through life. I had these parents, I have these situations, and I believed all that. Well, you veered off the path and had those experiences. Thank those people, get back on the path. All right, God, what do you think about me? Because that's really what matters. I'm only going to find my happiness if I connect with my truth. And my truth is that I am as God created me. I cannot be any other way. So I'm going to continue sentence 6, but there is no miracle that can be given you unless you want it. Choose what would heal. And he who gives all miracles has not been given freedom to bestow his gifts upon God's Son. When he is tempted, he denies reality. When you're tempted, you deny reality. And he becomes the willing slave of what he chose instead. Holy Spirit cannot force us to heal. God cannot force any one of us, will not cannot. God, of course, God could, but will not force any one of us to operate as thinking that we're less than the creators that we are. So if we want to create suffering, we want to veer off the path, if we want to live a life of temptations meaning things that tempt us into believing things that are not true, we are allowed to do that because God has given us total, complete freedom, because God knows that we still exist in its mind. We are that piece of the puzzle. Whether we can't find all the information that allows us to connect with all the other pieces so we can see the bigger picture does not alter that our piece of the puzzle contains everything that God is, expressing itself uniquely as you and me. See, God is everything. And it's male, it's female, it's black, it's white, it's tall, it's yellow, it's short, it's a doctor, it's a shepherd, it's all of it. So it expresses itself in all the different ways that lets it have all these experiences, including blades of grass and little piglets that are born, or fat pigs that get taken to the slaughter. All of that are opportunities for God to express itself in all the different ways that it can. Because God knows that because we are energy, there are no souls that are ever hurt in a human experience, none whatsoever. As a matter of fact, when we die, we have the death experience. You see the body, but the soul is not there. The soul is the being that animated the body to have the experience, to have the contracts, to have the lessons that were necessary. And when its time is done, it checks out. And as they say, I learned this from listening to Abraham Hicks, every death is a suicide, because every death is a checking out when we're done with this human incarnation. So whether it's peacefully or in a car accident or whatever, we all leave when it's time to leave because we're done. And the beautiful thing about finding that middle way where you know you are eternal, when you live inside of that knowingness, you are absolutely free from any suffering. Because yes, in the human world, relationships are going to change. People are going to die. People are going to leave you. Or you'll leave somebody. Houses are going to change. Financial situations are going to change. Careers are going to change. Your body's going to change. So if you get comfortable with that, what is real is changeless, you will connect with that part within you that is navigating all those changes, knowing you can handle them. You're just moving through this path, living as this person who have an experience that feeds the source with expressions, experiences, just the opportunities to feel that it couldn't feel. It was just strictly pure energy in a dream. We have an important role to play. It's very important, but it's also important that you know that it's just a role, so you don't get attached to it, because it's going to change. Every lifetime is a different role, and we play roles for each other that are important. So watch who you're playing roles for in this lifetime, because if you do something that hurt someone in this lifetime, well, in the next lifetime, they get to do that to you so that you can learn forgiveness, so that you can learn kindness and gentleness. But if you learn that in this lifetime, you don't have to keep incarnating to learn through karma. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have to end this episode pretty much now, because I've been invited as a guest on a friend's podcast, and we're going to talk about karma. I'm going to share with him that karma doesn't have to continue. Once you understand the rules of the game, karma ends. Karma is when you veer off the path and you have to learn through hard lessons. But once you know, oh, I don't have to learn through hard lessons, I'm going to learn through love, then there's no more karma, because karma is a pendulum swinging from right to wrong, from superior to inferior. Once you're down the middle path, there is nothing to learn in that way, in the hard way. You don't have to play mean roles for each other anymore. You get to just play roles with friends that you all know that you're playing roles, and it's a whole different ball game. And that more of that is being shown to me, and I'm understanding that more. I couldn't understand all of that while I was learning about this human world and how to pull myself out of the path of suffering and get on the path where I remember the truth that I am the love. I am the light. I am the way. I am as God created me, and I cannot be anything other than what I am. So thanks for being here today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others. And this was episode 164. I'll get it posted on YouTube pretty soon. And I so appreciate you guys being here. Love you all. Ah, what a privilege to do this. Take care. Bye-bye.